That's right, Afnan. That's what Ankara has been emphasizing. It's basically saying that it cannot be pushed into taking a side because there is a view that some countries want Turkey to basically take a position, either be with Russia or with the Western bloc. Ankara says that that's not how a realpolitik works. It's saying that it has its interests associated both with Ukraine and with Russia. It has good relations with both countries. And it says that this is where it's trying to use that to leverage basically the position to try and get both conflicting parties on the negotiating table. This is what President Erdogan emphasized when he was talking to the journalists. He said that Turkey has been talking to both sides, trying to get them on the negotiating table to talk. And he said that Ankara believes that negotiations is the best way forward, as opposed to those who are calling for greater sanctions or perhaps the use of hard power. So this is the message he's trying to send out. He's also, when talking to both parties, saying that Turkey understands the concerns on both sides. So, for example, as far as Ukraine is concerned, Ankara has made its position very clear that it fully supports and stands behind Ukraine as far as the protection of its territorial integrity is concerned. So that includes, of course, Crimea, that includes the Donbass region. And also when Ankara is talking to Moscow, it says that it understands the security concerns Moscow has, especially when it comes to NATO expansionism and basically the concerns that are coming from there. So Ankara has been pushing for both sides and their concerns to be taken into account. And basically, it doesn't seem to be favoring the sort of warmongering that is coming from some side. Here is trying to de-escalate the situation, but you have to understand the realpolitik surrounding this. So, of course, Russia sees this as an opportunity to assert itself. If you look at the language of Russian President Vladimir Putin, you know, he's been quite nostalgic about the USSR. He's been talking about how the basically breaking up of the USSR was the biggest political tragedy of the 20th century. Clearly, he is concerned about the buffer zone that Russia has lost. And especially when Ukraine talks about NATO membership and when the Russian president sees military presence of NATO and its expansion in Eastern Europe, he's concerned about that. On the other hand, Ukraine has its concerns about its territorial integrity, political unity. Ankara says it understands that. So both sides are trying to basically use this as an opportunity to maximize their gains. The West has its own interests, especially when you talk about the dominating countries in the global North. You know, they seem to be pushing for conflict for more sanctions. There are the hawks amongst them who are pushing for perhaps greater use or display of hard power. Turkey is trying to avoid that. It's a key member of the NATO military alliance. It's trying to use that position. It's trying to use its contacts with Moscow, with Kiev, to basically reach a sort of situation that's acceptable to all. But obviously you can understand that at this point in time, during the heat of this moment, everyone really wants to maximize their gains. It seems that there's been some change in the schedule. And Turkey, I think, is going to, first of all, we've had the Turkish president talking to his German counterpart. They've been discussing the situation. They've been emphasizing on de-escalation. It seems that the German leadership appears to support Ankara's position that, this is not the time for escalation. This is not the time to sort of make gains by pushing this conflict further. So it seems that Ankara is going to be saying that de-escalation needs to be the way forward. There are genuine security concerns of Moscow, and then, of course, there are genuine political concerns from Kiev. They need to be taken into account. Ankara is saying that it doesn't accept the violation of the Minsk agreements, the Minsk Protocol, as well as Minsk II. So it argues that it's important that that status quo is preserved, and that basically talks move on from that status quo. This sort of escalation, Ankara believes, is not going to, in the long term, benefit anyone in this region or even beyond. It's going to have serious repercussions, not just for this region, but also for players in Western Europe. For example, Germany relies heavily on Russian gas. So, this interdependence, Ankara says, is going to affect those countries as well, who at the moment seems to be pushing for war. The plan was to focus not just on bilateral relations. So, for example, when he went to the Democratic Republic of Congo, he looked at bilateral relations between the two countries. The two leaders agreed that they want to take bilateral trade volume up to $250 million. That trade volume had plummeted over the last few years. At one point, it had reached some $160 million a year, but then it plummeted to around $40 million. So they have basically discussed the measures to take to increase that trade volume again. They've discussed security cooperation. We know that there is some security instability in the east of Democratic Republic of the Congo, and it seems that the DRC wants to benefit from Turkey's military and security capabilities. There is the Somalia model, the successful Somalia model that Turkey implemented in front of many African countries, and it seems that they view Turkey as a partner that would mutually benefit them as well, and it's not going to come in as the sort of European colonizers did. So that was quite a successful trip. Then he went to Senegal. There again, there was emphasis on bilateral relations. They wanted to take the bilateral trade volume up to more than $500 million a year. They discussed that mechanism. We saw basically the inauguration of a new residential compound of the Turkish embassy there. I think if you look at the bigger picture, what Ankara is doing is it's basically, as part of its new foreign policy, sending out the message of how much importance it lays on Africa. President Erdogan is probably the head of the state who's visited Africa more than anyone else over the last decade or so, more than 40 visits to Africa. If you look at the number of Turkish diplomatic missions in Africa, back in 2019 there were around 12 or so. They've now crossed 40, and Ankara is making it quite clear that Africa is a very important part of Turkey's foreign policy. But at the same time, President Erdogan has repeatedly said that unlike European colonizers, what Turkey is doing is it's basically carrying a foreign policy that is based on mutual interest and mutual respect. Number one, there was agreement that Turkey is going to be investing more in those countries. They discussed some of the hurdles when it comes to bilateral trade, for example, some of the red tapeism that was experienced owing to various reasons, some of the structural issues that basically witnessed the fall in bilateral trade between Turkey and some of these countries. Those issues were discussed. They worked out ways to resolve them. Also, they talked about Turkish assistance. So we have various Turkish aid agencies like TİKA that have been working in various African countries. They agreed to enhance that Turkish support. They also agreed that Turkey is going to be investing more in the education sector in some of these countries, especially in the case of DRC, where Turkey is running schools there. Under the Marif Foundation, they agreed that Turkey is going to be setting up more schools, investing more in education, especially for those who cannot afford education. Turkey is also going to be taking part in the construction of more than 1,000-kilometer-long highway in DRC. Turkey is going to be constructing a railway line. So these are some of the projects, infrastructure development projects they discussed. As far as the economy is concerned, on the security side, some of these countries have been witnessing insecurity, especially in the east of DRC. Turkey has discussed the capacity building of the Congolese troops, and also in the future possible deployment of Turkish troops.